Back to the channel. It's actually been a while since I've last streamed. I've been busy Uber driving and making some money that we desperately needed here. But I've done that now, and now I have some more time during this rainy day to look over some games I played in this tournament. My opponent today is Fred Pearson, who has the white pieces and is a candidate master. I've played Fred 3 times. I played Fred in the 80s, the 90s, and maybe 4 to 6 months ago. And I was fortunate enough to win all 3 games. Now, I consider Fred to be about the same playing strength as me, and so winning 3 games against him means that, according to the law of averages, he's due for a win soon. So I was terrified going into this game with the black pieces. And that brings up the topic of this video. What do you do when you're afraid? And I've discovered something about myself, or maybe rediscovered it, that I think I'll try to keep in mind in future games here. So the game opened e4, and I went with my can't lose defense, which is the Petrov. Of course, it's still possible to lose anything, but I feel like that if I had to play for my life, I would play the Petrov defense to make sure I didn't lose the game. So that's kind of how I felt going into this game. But we come across a little crisis here in a few moves, which kind of reveals something to me about myself that I have to keep in mind for future games here. So after these well-known book moves, Fred surprised me with c4 here. Now, I knew instantly that this is an inaccuracy, okay? It's considered a white. If white wants to get an advantage, he's a castle first to avoid the coming simplification. Okay. So I played the correct move fairly quickly because I remembered some old game of Pillsbury's where he played bishop b4 check and get a perfectly good position. The question though is, what do you do after knight bd2? Now, remember what I said is that I was afraid going into this game. But, you know, in recent days I've been thinking about a quote from world champion Tal where he says he began to succeed when he realized that, yeah, he might be afraid, but guess what? He realized that his opponent was afraid too. I'm afraid, you're afraid. Like, fear is just part of the game, and you have to deal with it. You still have to try to make the best moves here. So in my case, when I'm afraid, what I like to do is simplify the position. I figure that keep it simple, reduce my opponent's attacking possibilities. But the problem with that is I'm giving half a loaf away. Like, I'm kind of minimizing my chances of winning the game. So in this position, like, really, I think what I should do is just castle, okay, and keep the tension. So after castle, all right, now e4 might be under attack, so we play bishop f5, and white would keep the pressure up, right? Now it's probably appropriate to simplify because, you know, he does have some pressure on e4, and we can't just retreat the knight because we'll lose a piece. So after bishop takes d2, we reach some position like this, and this simplification is okay. White perhaps still has a very small advantage, but black should have no problems drawing this game. But I simplified a little bit too quickly. Instead of playing this natural move, castle, and by the way, anytime you have a double e-pawn opening and it opens up a little bit, castle needs to happen before move 10. It's just a basic law of king-pawn openings. And if you're not castling before move 10, then you're doing something wrong. So castle is the right move, but I opted for trading off two pieces right away. So what I did was knight takes d2. And after bishop takes d2, I said, well, let's toss in another check here. And we can simplify the game further. Now, this isn't bad. And perhaps, this would have given me chances too. I mean, if you just look at this position, what I opted to do in the game is queen takes e2. But now when I look at it, I'm like, why? Okay. White's king is like in the middle of the board here, with heavy pieces still on the board. Why should I be in such a hurry to trade queens? Doesn't it make more sense to not trade queens if your opponent is got a somewhat unsafe king? Surely to move bishop e6 has to be worthy of consideration here, right? And it's white now who I think is eager to trade queens before something like queen to b4 check happens, right? So this is again the second time here where no, don't get me wrong, black isn't winning here, but this move, bishop e6, gives my opponent chances to go wrong. I'm too eager to simplify and thereby make things easy for my opponent. So I just played queen takes e2, and after bishop takes, another simplification here. And now I castled. So the question here is, who's better? And the very simple answer is white is. Because unfortunately, with all this simplification of mine, I've lost time. And I was insufficiently mindful of. I'm too interested in the pawn structure. Yes, this is an isolated pawn, right? But who's ahead in development here? The answer clearly is white, okay? And with this nice-looking bishop bearing down on f7, like, white still has possibilities of an advantage. But the way to go about it, apparently, is to move rook he1 first, okay? And one variation goes something like bishop g4, rook e7. Let's shatter his pawns. Knight c6, rook takes c7, knight takes d4, rook takes b7, and knight takes here check. And the question is, how do we evaluate this position? The truth of the matter is that white is still better. And black can very quickly go wrong here by playing something like knight takes h2, being a little greedy. And unfortunately, what that runs into is rook he1. Now the rook comes down to e7 here. And once that rook gets on e7, white basically has a can't-lose position with tremendous pressure on the f7 point, to say nothing of the two rooks on the 7th. So white would actually love to have this position a pawn down, because he has tremendous activity for his pieces, and I'm still behind in development here. So, but that doesn't mean that the position's unplayable. It just means that I can't play knight takes h2. But anyway, white is still a little bit better because this bishop is better than a knight. So Fred actually didn't go for that. He went back in this position. He went knight e5 right away, which kind of makes sense because you put pressure on the f7 point. But after knight d7, I'm able to challenge things just in time. So now Fred followed up with the rook fe1. He should have played the move before. But I'm able to gain time by kicking the bishop here. And after it retreats, I again opted for simplification, which in this case isn't that bad because after bishop takes, pawn takes, I do have some activity for the rook down the f-file. So this is okay. But it's again part of a trend that when I'm nervous, I tend to simplify. In this particular move, it's all right, though. So after king e2 to get the rook off an exposed square, some natural moves followed here. And Fred took time out to make sure the knight's not going to b4. I just kind of was hanging out here hoping to get a draw, and I succeeded. Although, again, I made another inaccuracy with exchanging too soon. See, here I am, I'm eager to exchange again, right? So, knight there, f4. I played h4, which is a good move because I want to get rid of that exposed h5 pawn. King f3, pawn takes. And now the question is, what do we do in this position? Okay. A good move actually is rook to d6, just hanging out. And after something like knight c4, rook d5, knight e3, I invite white to show progress. But I was a little bit too eager to simplify, and so instead of this, I played the move knight takes e5 right away. And after pawn takes, something happened here which surprised me greatly, which is that Fred offered me a draw. And quite naturally, I took it because agreeing to a draw is one way to make sure you don't lose. And analysis shows I was well justified in taking the draw because if you look at this position, I mean, isn't white better, right? I mean, wouldn't you rather have the white pieces? Like, it's not too hard to imagine something like king e4 and g4 and f5 is one possibility. If this c pawn ever moves and maybe rook to d6 happens, another possibility is king to g4 and king to g5, further increasing white's space advantage. So white has some sort of advantage here, and I would argue that he has a can't-lose position. So he should have played on a few moves, but this comes back to the quote from world champion Tal, like, not only was I afraid, I discovered my opponent was afraid too. Like, he probably said to himself, well, I've lost to this guy 3 times. Let's make sure just for this game, I come out of this with a draw, and then after that we can talk about future games. And so I understand why he offered a draw, even though he was a little bit better. And it was probably a good move for me to take it, lest I play on and really have to defend this kind of an unpleasant situation for black. Yes, I should be able to hold, but really, white's the only one who can possibly win this game. So what I learned is, when you're nervous, that's one of those occupational habits of chess. Just like when you're an Uber driver, you have to deal with potholes, right? So if you're a chess player, you have to deal with being nervous and realize that your opponent is nervous too. So in the future, what I should try to do is just play the best moves, even if it means keeping the tension, and not be in a rush to simplify. Yes, there is a time and a place to simplify, but I shouldn't rush to do so. Keep the tension and just try to keep playing the best moves. And I think maybe next time we'll do better. So far after round 3 in this tournament, I have 2.5 points out of 3. And going into the last round, it's going to be a battle for first place. Thank you all for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye.